So how did I find out that my husband was sleeping with my mom? Okay, so first I should probably talk about some of the red flags that I saw before I actually definitively found out that the affair was happening. So one thing that kind of shifted and changed in their behavior was that when they would greet each other hello or say goodbye, instead of it being like a side, like pat, 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 like hello, goodbye, she would like wrap her arms around his neck and he would like swing her around in a circle to like say hello. He also started giving my mom foot rubs in front of me. On Valentine's Day, 2 days before I found out about the affair, he brought home flowers for me and for my mom. But the biggest red flag is that on multiple occasions, with multiple witnesses, my mother and ex-husband would say, you know, if Catherine and her dad ever were to tragically pass away simultaneously, we would totally end up together. So, Catherine, how did you not cut ties with your mother and your husband right then and there the first time it was said? Because I'm an idiot. Because I was brainwashed my entire fucking childhood by that woman. I don't know. I'm dumb. I know. Hindsight, dude, 2020. So that's just like a handful of red flags. So why didn't I ever say anything? Why didn't I ever bring it up to my mom or my husband? Because I didn't want to believe it was happening. I didn't want to accept that the two people I trusted the most in this whole world could betray me like that. So I would make up any excuse I could for their behavior. I didn't want to believe it. But I finally knew I wasn't crazy when my grandmother, my mom's mother, came to me and expressed that she had a feeling something was going on between my mom and my husband. So my grandmother came to me and she had expressed that she had witnessed some odd behavior between my mother and my husband. And when she told me this, I mean, part of me was absolutely crushed. But the other part of me felt so validated to know that I wasn't crazy and that I wasn't the only one seeing these things. So I asked her, what do I do? Do I confront them? Do I ask them? Because in my head, I still didn't want to believe that something was happening. And sure, everything that was happening was insanely inappropriate, but it doesn't outright 100% prove that an affair is happening. I know, obviously it was. But I didn't have proof. And for me, it's like I did not want to make those accusations if I didn't have cold, hard evidence. So my grandma, bless her heart, she encouraged me that the truth always comes to light, and she encouraged me to just sit and wait. And I wasn't sure if I was going to follow that advice. But turns out I didn't have to, because that night I got proof. Okay, so it's February of 2022, and a couple months prior, my husband had been fired from his job. And so in order to pay the mortgage, he was door dashing. And anytime that he would DoorDash, he would always let me know what time frame he planned on doing that for. And if he ever planned on running later than he first initially told me, he'd let me know, hey, I'm going to work later than I thought. This was never an expectation that I asked for. It was just something that he created. So I always knew when he was working and when to expect him home so I could have dinner ready. So that night he had told me that he'd be home around 9, and when 9:30 came around and I hadn't heard from him, I reached out to him. Specifically, I FaceTimed him. So he answered, and I asked him what time he thought he would be home and if I needed to have dinner ready for him or if I could just go to bed. He had expressed that he had lost track of time and didn't realize how late it had gotten and that he would be heading home soon. He said, don't worry about dinner, I'll just hit a drive-thru on the way home. Now, as he's talking, I'm paying attention to the background. He's in his car, but he's parked. And I notice out his driver's side window, the buildings behind him. And I realize that I recognize them. But I recognize them as being in the city we live in, not the city that he says he was in. So I go, hey, I thought you said you were in this city. And he's like, oh yeah, I am. So I should be home in about 20 minutes. And I go, no, you're not. I can see that building behind you and you're in this city that we live in. And his face goes white. And so we go back and forth arguing about where he is or where he isn't. And finally, he admits that he's exactly where I said he was. And I go, "Why are you lying? This is so weird. Like, what's going on?" And then all of a sudden, I can't make out what was said, but I could hear a woman's voice. And he turns over to his passenger seat as if listening to that voice speaking. And I go, "Who are you with?" And he says, "I'm not with anyone." And I say, "I just heard someone talk. Who are you with?" And he hung up on me. And as soon as he hangs up the phone, my heart is just like beating out of my chest. So I take a few minutes to literally have a panic attack and cry and process that I think I'm right. Oh my gosh, he's having an affair. Is it my mom? Is it somebody else? I'm freaking out. So I FaceTime him again and he answers. And I again am just asking him, what is going on? Why are you lying? I know you're with somebody. I'm not stupid. And he accuses me of being crazy and not trusting him, and that he's given me no reason to not trust him, and is just gaslighting me. So then I say, "Show me the passenger seat." And he says, "No." And he hangs up on me again. So then I cry and I freak out even more, collect myself, and I call him again on FaceTime. And I am like, what the is happening? Like, if you're not hiding anything, why won't you just show me? If I'm crazy, then just show me and prove yourself correct. And so, mind you, my crying panic attack episode lasted a few minutes before I called him again. So this time when I'm saying all of this, he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll show you." Turns the camera to his passenger seat. Sure enough, it's empty. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, so you just expect me to believe that during that time you hung up on me, that she didn't just get out of your car and she's hiding outside right now?" So he just continues to say that I'm crazy and says, "I'll be home soon. I'll talk to you later," and hangs up on me again. So at this point, I'm like 99% sure that it's my mom. I just have this gut feeling. I had just talked to my grandmother that morning about the situation. Like, I'm 99% sure, but I wanted to be 100% sure. So then I decided to call my little sister because she was still living at home with our parents at the time. Through my tears, I managed to get the words out that I'm trying to say, and I ask her if our mom is home. And she goes, I don't know. I'm in bed. Like, it's late at night. What's going on? Are you okay? Are the babies okay?" And I said, "I really just need you to do me a favor and find out if mom is home." And she goes, "Why? What's going on?" And I say, "Sister, I really need you to go find out if mom is home." And she goes, "Okay, I don't want to keep this from you. Your husband came by earlier tonight and picked mom up to take her door dashing with him, and they told me not to tell you." And that confirms that I was right, that they were together. So I'm hysterical and I'm crying and I'm telling my sister, "They're having an affair, sister, they're having an affair." And of course she goes, "What? No, they're not. They would never do that, Catherine. Like, no, don't think that way. They love you. That's our mom. That's your husband. Like, no, no, no. It's just a misunderstanding." Because of course you don't want to believe that that's actually really happening. But I knew that I was right. Because of my little sister, I finally had my 100% guarantee. I knew they were together. So this time I called my mom. She didn't answer, so I called her again and again and again, and I called her 8 times. And when she finally answered, she goes, "What, Catherine?" And again, through my weeping, I just said to her, "Just tell me why." And she goes, "Why what?" And I said, "You know what." And I can hear my husband in the background saying, "Put it on speaker, put it on speaker." So I hear her muffle with her phone to put it on speaker. And then she goes, "Tell you why I'm with your husband." And then she goes on this rant about how she had a really bad day today, and my husband had reached out to her earlier to see how she was doing, and after she told him, he went to go pick her up to get her out of the house to have some fresh air, and there's nothing wrong with that. I then addressed my husband because I knew I was on speakerphone, and I let him know that before he took her home, they both needed to get to our house so the three of us could have a chat. So eventually they got to the house, and when they walked in, they tried to come hug me. And I told them, do not fucking touch me. And I looked both of them dead in their eyes. And I said, are you two fucking each other? Without even so much as moving a muscle in his face, my husband looks at me and says, no. And my mother says, I would never cross that boundary. But of course, I knew the truth. I knew. Even without them admitting it, I knew. So I ended up telling my mom to get the hell out of my house. And I went to bed. I didn't sleep, but I went to bed. It was not until the next day that they finally decided to come clean and admit that they were, in fact, having an affair. So the next day, I had to get out of the house, and I just had to talk to somebody, anybody. And I had decided to reach out to my older sister, not the one that is adopted and not my baby sister, my older sister. I went to her house, and she lives just down the street from me, and so I went to go fill her in on the previous night. During that conversation, she had revealed to me that she had witnessed some inappropriate behavior between my mother and my husband as well. On Christmas Day, just a couple months prior, the whole entire family had spent Christmas at our parents' house. And at one point during the day, when my sister had walked into the kitchen, she walked in on my mother, leaned over the counter, clothed, but with my husband's groin pressed up against her behind. But I was just barely hearing about it for the first time right then and there. Anyway, I cried with her for a couple hours before I told her I have to leave. I have to go talk to our dad now. Like, he needs to know what's going on. So I texted my dad and I told him that I needed to talk to him immediately, and he agreed to meet up with me. When we were finally together, I told him I don't know how to say this without just saying it, so that's all I can do. And I said, I believe that Mom and my husband are having an affair. And I expected him to be shocked, surprised, confused, angry, sad, something of the sort. But he wasn't. He said, you need to go talk to your husband because today he's going to tell you the truth. And I said, what does that mean? Do you know something that I don't know? And again, he said, you need to go talk to your husband because today he's going to tell you the truth. So now I'm realizing that my dad already knows. Did my mother, when she finally went home the previous night, talk to him about it? Did she talk to him about it today before I talked to him about it? Like, why is he beating around the bush and not having a fucking conversation with me about it? But I was not about to go confront my ex-husband alone without support, because if what I thought was happening, I was going to need help. So my father, my older sister, my younger sister, and my grandmother met me at my house so that they could be with the babies while I confronted my husband. Luckily, I was smart enough to pull up my phone and hit record before our conversation began. And he admitted to the whole affair. He admitted to everything. In detail, he told me about how horrible of a wife and a mom that I was, and that he deserves better. He had no remorse. In fact, he seemed proud. And after he admitted to having an affair with my mom in my bed, he immediately began to talk about how we were going to split custody and what we were going to do with the house, and he revealed to me all the credit card debt that he had racked up that I had no idea about. He had it all planned out. Ooh, I did not think I'd start crying. I don't cry about this a lot anymore because I've had a lot of time to process it. But the last few days have been overwhelming. A lot of people have asked, how is your relationship with your mom? And Not that going through this could ever be easy. Ever. But I think it'd be so different had we been estranged or didn't have a relationship. But my mom was my best friend. So anyway, after I recorded that whole conversation, I realized, that this is my life, this is happening. And I've got 2 precious babies that I need to protect from growing up in an environment that my husband and mother were going to provide. So I had texted my family that was downstairs watching the girls to get the girls and leave immediately. I don't care where you go right now. Let me know where you're at, but you need to get the girls out of this house. He told me that if he couldn't stand me, he could leave, but that he was not going to leave his house, that this was his house. So I knew that I had to go because I wasn't going to argue with him. So I packed the 3 suitcases that I own with the absolute necessities that my daughters and I would need. Mind you, at this point, they were 11 months old. Eventually found out that they were at my grandma's house, who also lives just down the street. And then, like I said before, my mom moved in that same night too. So that is the story of how I caught my husband having the affair and my mom having the affair and how I found out.